As the extent of the fire damage came to light, it was clear that the enthusiasm and will of the veterans was going to be severely tested. Word of the fire spread to the community, and the response was immediate. Many volunteered their time, money, or both to help, just as so many others had in the past.
And that's what is keeping us alive. $10 here, $25 there, once in a while a $100 check. When they find out what we're trying to do, we've had people volunteer who are professionals. They can be an electrician or whatever. They want to see that boat in the water running.
Throughout the restoration, the small band of PT veterans had been assisted by a diverse group of volunteers, many of whom brought with them much-needed skills. But they all brought something else too, something even more important. They brought needed enthusiasm and a passion for the project, which came to match that of the vets themselves.
And about 3 years ago, my mother wrote an article in the paper about the PT boat being redone down at Swan Island here. And so I just wanted to come down and have a look. And I just felt a real connection with it from what my father had told me. And I just started volunteering whenever I had time. And it's just been a great experience.
It's really interesting for me because I'm a history buff, so I kind of am enjoying learning all this stuff that I never knew about, these wooden boats, you know. It's just been a lot of fun being around them and working on this piece of living history.
I've in some ways become part of the boys, and they welcome me, and they are just such compassionate, generous men. I'm a history teacher by trade, and so it's incredible to see history through their eyes and through their lifetimes.
World War II was the largest armed conflict in history, and winning it required the concerted efforts of millions who were willing to set aside personal ambition for the common good. Everyone played a part, whether at home or overseas, and during the long and arduous climb through the Solomon Islands and up the coast of New Guinea, PTers had played their role well. The combined efforts of the Navy, Army, Air Corps, and Marines had relentlessly pushed the Japanese back toward their home islands.
The plan that MacArthur had devised was to get these Japanese groups on these islands, subdue them, surround them, and leave them there. Move on to the next island.
From a PT boat's point of view, these are actually stepping stones. I can help the air-land team use trifibious forces, ships, aircraft, and land units to seize an island, and then it becomes an air base and an unsinkable aircraft carrier for the aviators. It becomes a resupply point and staging area for the ground troops for their next assault, and it becomes my base, so I don't have to operate 500 miles at night. I can operate 200 miles away from my base.
Then our job was to police it, make sure they didn't run more people in, people out, supplies in. So that's what we did.
There just wasn't anybody else to do it. And I think they were effective all over because the Japanese did not like the PT boats.
Japanese called the PTs devil boats. They were always creating all kinds of problems for them. So whenever you talked to them about it, well, that's a devil boat, they didn't like it.
By October 1944, the United States was poised to regain the Philippines. The Japanese command knew that if the Philippine Islands were lost, so too was the war. Their plan to halt the inevitable led to the Battle for Leyte Gulf, the largest naval engagement in modern history. Comprised of 4 separate actions, PT boats played a significant role at the Battle of Surigao Straits.
Well, there was probably about 40 PT boats that were stationed at various locations on either side of those straits. The PT boats were sent out to make the first contact and observation of the Jap ships coming in.
Our instructions were to radio in when we saw the enemy. And actually it was our boat, the 127, that radioed back to fleet headquarters where the Japanese were exactly and so forth. A couple of destroyers showed up. It was very dark, and we could see them on our radar, and we went out to attack them. We had an executive officer named Bill Stewart, and Bill was right there at the wheel, and I was at the 50, and he said, "Well, Bruck, let's go get them." We got 2 torpedoes off, and we ran into a rain squall. Couldn't see anything. Except for flashes of gunfire going off. Big flash in the sky, tracer bullets. Like a 4th of July celebration. Red-hot projectiles going back and forth. And it was scary. You think that you might get frightened, but to get really scared takes time. And I'm not ashamed to say that I was scared before that battle was over. We spent a very nervous night. We didn't know who'd won or whether we had a place to go back to. They told us that we'd have scored a big victory, and the Japanese lost nearly everything that came up the strait at us.
As a result of the battle for Leyte Gulf, the Japanese Navy effectively ceased to exist, yet it was more than 9 months before the U.S. fleet sailed into Tokyo Bay to accept the Japanese surrender. Ironically, of the 253 Allied ships present, not even one was a PT.
PT boats didn't rank very high in the Navy, but that's all right.
After 60 years, the men's affection for PT boats remains unchanged, evident in their determination to see the restoration through. By 2003, veterans Jim Brunette, Bob Hostetler, Al McCready, Frank Lesage, Harry Wiedemeyer, Rolf Bruckner, John Aiken, B.D. Lay, and Russ Hamachek had worked diligently for more than a decade.
We started working together just like we'd been in the war together. It's the strangest sensation. It's a nice one.
There's been a kind of a closeness. One time a guy asked, or he said, we could have made a real good crew in World War II. And I tell him, hey, we are a good crew.
But time had taken its toll on the ranks of Save the PT Boat Incorporated. Al McCready, PT Boat crewman, editor of the Oregonian for many years and one of the original members of the group, died on June 30th, 2003. He was preceded on his last patrol, as PT boaters like to say, by a dedicated group of veterans: Brian Larson, Claire Brown, Don Carter, Dwayne Craigrud, Jesse Sohn, and Kenneth Morris were early and avid supporters of the effort to restore PT 658. Their energy and hard work were missed. Spurred on by the passing of time and a new sense of urgency, efforts were redoubled and plans for a June launch were made. Through the winter and early spring of 2004, charred beams, bulkheads, and other structures were repaired or removed and replaced, while virtually the entire boat was sanded and painted. It was with a collective sigh of relief that the deck was finally replaced and the pilot house returned to its position. The canvas awning, in place for nearly 10 years, was stripped away, and PT 658 was at last open to the sun. In final preparation, Al McCready's daughter, Molly, proudly completed the painting of the transom. After 12 long years, PT 658 was at last ready to be launched. Just after dawn, on the morning of June 7, 2004, just one day after the 60th anniversary of the Normandy invasion, and 1 week after the dedication of the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C., the veterans of Save the PT Boat Incorporated gathered on the dock at Swan Island. As volunteers and friends watched from the dock and from small ships, a tug nosed against the barge holding PT 658 and slowly moved her into the channel for the trip across the inlet. Dwarfed by massive cranes and flanked by a cruise ship and a U.S. Navy magazine boat, the barge carrying PT 658 was gently moved into position. Longshoremen attached slings to the cradle, and in moments, PT 658 was hoisted over the side and into the water for her return trip to Swan Island and the last stages of her restoration. The launching of PT-658 was a great accomplishment for the veterans, volunteers, and supporters, but there was still more to be done. After a fresh coat of deck paint, the 50 caliber guns were installed on their mounts in the gun tub's port and starboard of the wheelhouse, and the torpedoes and depth charges were secured amidships. With almost all of her armament in place, PT-658 was beginning to look more like a gunship than a light, fast torpedo boat.
We're going to shoot down at least 3 zeros today.
A state-of-the-art navigation system was installed on the bridge, including radar and LORAN. In the engine compartment, the vets and volunteers worked tirelessly to coax the massive Packards to life. A hydraulic throttle system was put in place, allowing the helmsman to control all 3 engines from the bridge, and after many trials and much fine-tuning, PT-658 was ready for her long-awaited maiden voyage.
Welcome back. You just sort of feel like you're 18 again. You know what I mean?
As with any boat, PT-658 shakedown crews revealed some problems. The carburetors and exhaust needed work, but the problems were minor compared to what the men had been through previously. By June, more than 60 years after her keel was laid, PT-658 was ready for her christening.
Local veterans came to dedicate the world's first fully restored and operational U.S. Navy motor torpedo boat.
I suspect each one of us had his own reasons. Relive his youth, hear those 3 big Packards roar, stand on the deck of a fast-moving boat. Whatever our reasons, we were advised it was an impossible task, that it would never run, much less float. And never tell an old PT boater that it can't be done.
We've been working on this for about 12 years. From stem to stern, from gunnel to gunnel, from deck to keel.
But it's been a heck of a lot of work.
We built the gun tubs, we put the rub rails on, we managed to bring it to completion.
It needs to have a bottle broken over the bow, that's all there is to it.
It's the only one. It means that we have now said to the people, we have a boat, a World War II PT boat.
For PT boaters in the dark of night, in the South Pacific, and enemy territory, in a little wooden boat, that took a lot of guts.
Back in 1963, I had the ambition to take a PT boat up the Willamette River. I thought that would be fun. Well, today I got to do it, and it was a real thrill.
The vision and perseverance of a handful of World War II veterans has given to the city of Portland, the state of Oregon, and the nation a gift that is truly timeless. For future generations, PT 658 will be an invaluable source of historical and maritime history. For those who took part in the war, she will be a reminder of their service and a proud legacy of the fighting men and ships of the Mosquito Fleet.